What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. It's the Wager Alarm live stream. I'm your host, Howard Bender. With me here, of course, Craig Mish. Craig, time to start talking some prop bets, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. We got pitchers and catchers, Howard, on the field. I've been at spring training now. The other day, I went to check out the Marlins, and I'll be back on Monday, and they'll have their full squad there. And of course, being in South Florida, I get to see Houston. I get to see Houston, right? The Astros. The Washington Nationals, get to see the Mets, the Cardinals, and then the teams that come over. So this is a fun time of the year for me. And certainly what's always great about it is, especially with from a wagering perspective, for the first time, as you and I talked about last week, the Westgate Superbook in Las Vegas, and in addition to a lot of the online sports books, have posted not only just win totals, but props for the individual players, which to me, Howard, is a little bit dangerous, especially for the books. Because you can have certain things that can happen between now and the start of the season that can change significantly. As an example, not that I saw one, but Cole Hamels' win total was directly affected already. If you bet the under on that, you're probably feeling pretty good. So far, from what I've heard, at least out in Las Vegas, in terms of the props, I think that you're looking at, and I know this probably is big for a lot of people. I think you're looking at a max of 1,000 or 2,000 that you can do on these. I think that's the most. So if you have a really good feeling on a player, or better yet, you're watching one of these live streams with a host that says they're betting $10 million on Mike Trout's over on the home runs, you can call them out on that because it can't happen. It's not possible. Even if they say it's 10,000, it's probably not possible either unless he got a bunch of his buddies to get involved in it. But I think the max is on the low end of it. And of course, as we talk about online, it's also usually on the low end too. So one prop I wanted to go over that we hit last year that I want to go back on again. And then for tonight's live stream, what we'll do is we'll take a look at the upper tier totals as far as Major League Baseball home runs by individual players are. So I have two picks tonight, but I want to discuss all of the ones who are on the board, and certainly somebody like yourself who's in all the fantasy expert industry leagues and has been doing this for a long time. This is where really fantasy does meet reality on this one, because we're really doing projections. So you can speak to the live guide that you guys have up now and where you kind of have your projections, and then I'll speak to it for not just from the gambling point of view, but also the fantasy point of view as well.
Sounds like a good plan. I'm very happy to get into it. Yeah, listen, it's kind of funny. It's draft season right now in the fantasy world, so a lot of stuff is buzzing, a lot of stuff is happening. And yeah, I mean, listen, I've never been a huge projections guy as far as breaking it down, because there are a lot of elements that you obviously cannot quantify. Nevertheless, when it comes to, picking over-unders on home run totals, sure, you can kind of take a look. I mean, listen, there are some where you kind of look at the number and you say, like, for example, just, looking at the sheet right now, just Matt Chapman, 27.5 is the number on him. Would it surprise you in this day and age with the juiced ball that we dealt with last year, even though it's not supposed to be as live? Could you see Matt Chapman hit 30 home runs? Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Sure.
Could you see him tweaking a knee and being out for, a month and hitting 22? I mean, really, that's, it's the real oddball ones that I like to hone in on. I'm not going to sit there and worry about a range, but if I see something that's posted that I kind of find a little outlandish, and I have one that I've been looking at, and I'll run it by you there. Okay, but where do you want to start? You want to start all the way at the top?
Yeah, before we do that, I want to do the one that we did last year that hit. I want to go over it again this year for those of you who are interested. The total was higher last year, but this specific prop, and when we get closer to the season, we'll go over just, kind of a whole, plate of props. For now, we're doing home runs, but there's one that I wanted everybody to get in on now if you can, because I think this number will continue to go down, which is the total amount of stolen bases by one individual this season, and the over-under is 46.5. Look, every year we're waiting and we're calling out, both in reality and fantasy, that guy to steal 60 bases or 70 or 50. I mean, the numbers are staggering how far stolen bases are gone down. Now, Malik Smith ended up stealing 46 last year. The over-under on this one is 46.5. I don't see him repeating the season that he had last year to start with. The other players that were in this conversation last year, and I believe the total was 53, was Mondesi and Trey Turner. Both of them got hurt last year. When players only have a small skill set, which is basically only the stolen base, you have to bet against that happening. You have to do it because one 10-day injury to anything in your lower half is not just going to be a 10-day injury. They're going to come back. They're not going to steal as much. And from a historical point of view, every single year we're seeing stolen bases go down more and more and more. I don't think that's going to change this season. What is the possibility that it goes over? Well, look, I mean, it's going to be a little bit different now. You're not going to have as many left-handed pitchers with that good move to first base because you have to face 3 batters. So certainly that could go up by a steal or 2, depending on the player. But in general, teams are not valuing the stolen base anymore. And so with Smith, Mondesi, and Turner being at the top, I don't think anybody steals 50 bases this year. I don't think anybody steals 46.5 bases. And this prop has hit 2 years in a row. So I'm going to go back on it for a third year. It's under 46.5 stolen bases from any player in Major League Baseball this season. I think that – I don't think it – I mean, I think there's a chance the leader even gets 40. It keeps happening, Howard. These guys keep getting hurt and they keep missing time.
Well, it's not it's not just that they keep getting hurt, but you're also seeing less aggressiveness on the bases because what we do lack is we lack that typical prototypical leadoff speed guy. You know, it's like Billy Hamilton could have, should have, would have had he been able to get on base. So when you look at a guy like Malik Smith, listen, I like Malik Smith a little bit more than you maybe, but I he would probably be the only guy. There really aren't any other specialists out there. Gerard Dyson, now that he signed with Pittsburgh,
right.
There's really nobody out there that really jumps out.
Do you see Malik Smith getting 566 plate appearances again this year? I mean, maybe you do. I don't know. I'm just asking. Do you see him getting 510 at-bats and 566 plate appearances? I don't.
I feel like listen, maybe slightly
under,
but yeah, I mean, listen, there's nobody else. Who else in Seattle's going to play?
Listen,
are they going to sit him for somebody?
That's a very fair point as well. That's a very fair point. But he has had a lot of injuries over the course of his career, and I think that's the high mark for him. By the way, after 46, we had Mondesi with 43 because he only played in 102 games. So you can't extrapolate those numbers and just say, oh, well, if he only played in 102, then he's going to play in 150 and he's going to steal 60 bases. You can't do that. VR stole 40 with Miami last year. Look, he may steal in Miami. Mattingly has not been big on that. I can tell you that. He had D. Gordon. It was the only guy that he ever let run. I think that's about right. Acuna, Howard said what? He's going to steal 50, right? He's going to hit 50 and steal 50? Okay, good luck with that.
Listen, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination even remotely thinking about the over.
I'm just giving you all the possible options.
Right. And,
can I stop already, though? Like, is anybody even going to come close? Like, if it's Malik Smith and Mondesi, right? Like, is there anyone that would top that for you or come close?
No, not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
And remember last year, the narrative going into the season, I'm looking how far down they ended up in terms of steals. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my phone. The two guys, so it didn't happen because Merrifield only stole 20, so I could put the phone down. So last year, the narrative going into the season was what? First was going to be Mondesi. Second was going to be Merrifield. They were going to bat at the top of the lineup, and they each were going to steal 50 bases and combine for 100. Neither did it.
Listen, there were 200 fewer stolen bases last year than the year before. And you know what? It's a 7-year trend that's gone on right now. Maybe 6 or 7 year trend for stolen base dropping off. And like I said, there are no burners. There are no leadoff guys who are like that. We're starting to see a lot more of the atypical leadoff, get the guy with the high OBP on there, but don't worry about his speed, just as long as he gets on base. And that's, right. I think, what we've seen. Madden used to do that a bunch with the Cubs, moving guys around. So I feel like we're at that point where you can continue to do it. I don't see anybody hitting that 46 mark.
It's a shame. We
really don't.
In this day and age, there's a couple of kids in the minor leagues that are going to be coming up over the next couple of years that have a really good skill set to potentially pull this off. But I just think we're seeing so many injuries in the major leagues, and 1 10-day for Malik Smith puts him out of that.
Yeah, and listen, could I see a guy like Victor Robles stealing 45 bases, 50 bases? I could if he hit leadoff. Like, that's the problem, is that they bury him down in the middle of the
sometimes. They put the pitcher 8 sometimes with it.
So, all right, I like it. 46.5. I'm all in.
All in.
All right, let's hit some of the higher end home run guys.
All right, let's do it.
Start off right at the top. Now, what? Let me ask you this before we get to this, because obviously the huge power surge that we saw last year. I mean, that was ridiculous. I mean, when you see a guy like Ketel Marte going from 14 home runs to 30 plus home runs,
Sure.
it's very significant. Like, knowledge of the ball. I mean, obviously, we're not going to know until they start hitting it
Right.
in spring training or even when the season starts. But I mean, how much do you think it works, into that narrative that the ball is still juiced and they just want runs?
Well, I mean, Manfred did come out and say that last year that there was a little bit of extra drag on the ball. If he's acknowledging that, my guess is that that will come down a little bit. The one area of the over-unders and the home runs that I think, honestly, Howard's even a little bit more dangerous is everyone that has anything to do with the Texas Rangers this year, because we really have no idea what that ballpark is going to play like. So as it pertains to Oakland, the Angels, Seattle, and who am I missing? And the teams in that division, the Astros. The Astros. As it pertains to teams in that division, I'm going to be a little bit careful there because I'm not really sure of the answer. Now, remember, Texas's old ballpark, until they built the restaurant in the outfield, was like the number one offensive park in all of baseball. Then it got pulled back a little bit, and of course, their big home run hitter, as we'll talk about here, is Joey Gallo. For me, in general, not having enough information on that makes me pass almost universally on the American League West because you're guessing. I mean, you're really guessing. There's 18 games for Mike Trout that's going to be played in that ballpark, or 9 games that are going to be played in that ballpark this year. Half of that. I mean, what happens if Mike Trout goes to a hitter's ballpark there and hits 7 home runs in 9 games? That's going to change the outcome of the totals here. So I'm being a little bit more careful with those. As far as the ball is concerned, I expect less home runs. I mean, the narrative with betting props is very similar to the Super Bowl. Who wants to bet on these, Howard, in Las Vegas and bet the under? Is that fun?
Right. No.
Does anybody want to not see Yordan Alvarez hit 40 home runs? Does anybody not want to see that? People want to see that. So you would think trend yourself toward the under. You would have got destroyed on that last year if that was the case, because all these guys went over. So this is a little bit different. It's more analytical. It's less predictable. And you bring up an excellent point with the actual baseball, because that's going to be a big factor in the end here.
Yeah, I've heard things like it's not going to be as live a ball. I hear that the seams are going to be raised back up a little bit. It's going to help the grip. I mean, I've literally heard things back and forth. So, sitting there and looking at that, and you make a phenomenal point as far as the ballpark in Texas and shying away from all of those AL West teams. I'm perfectly fine with that. So let's turn the focus towards more hitter-friendly confines of the American League East. I mean, you look at this number for Aaron Judge at 37.5. Couldn't possibly get hurt again, could he?
I mean, he and Stanton, one at 37.5, the other one at 33.5. I feel like this is a spot-on number. In all likelihood, if you told me that Judge played in 150 games, he's probably going to crush this. But Howard, I think that injury factor is a big factor when it pertains to him. And also the other part of this in building any kind of bet for against Judge is realizing what the Yankees found out last year. They were in an emergency situation with Tauchman and Urshela and all of those guys who they ended up, and Luke Voigt and all the ones who ended up filling in for him. I think they got to feel pretty confident that if something was to happen to Judge, and maybe it was only a 10-day injury, they could stretch that thing to a month. They're so loaded. So there could be some days off sitting in here. I mean, I think he's got the power to go over, but I'm just going to stay out of it on this one. The Yankees learned a lot about themselves last year, and they learned that they can give extra days off to these guys. It kind of feels a little bit like an NBA situation with the Yankees. They're just so much better, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, you really think Booney's going to run the show that way and give these guys the extra time off? Yeah, it was nice to have that depth to fall back on, but I mean, are we really gonna lean on it that heavily? But I'm probably the wrong person to talk to because I'm a Yankees fan and I'm looking for the over.
I think that there are very few teams in baseball that it's World Series or bust, and there's no question it's World Series or bust for the Yankees. So anything less, and they wrap things up, let's say early September. There's a lot of sitting. I'm just going to stay away. Just not going to.
All right. Okay. All right. Hey, listen. You look at last year. There were only 10 guys who went over 40 home runs. So to sit here and wonder, who the 10 are going to be this year, if there are going to be 10 this year, I got you. I got it. So where do you want to hang out if you're looking at these numbers right here, and we're looking at the higher end, 26 home runs and more? Where are you looking most in order to make some of these bets?
Which players you mean?
Well, I mean, which players, which divisions are you focusing on?
Well, I mean, I could give you one over that I like, and then one under that I like, and then we could just go through any other numbers that you're interested in. The over that I like on the sheet for 2020 is Manny Machado's home runs over 31 and a half. I mean, I'm not sure why this number is only 31 and a half, and my guess is because he's only breaking 31 home runs, and it's not by a lot. But Howard, he's broken 30 home runs every single year that the guy has played for like 5 years. He's durable. He doesn't get hurt. It doesn't seem like Petco matters anymore. He's playing in a very good lineup. There is more lineup protection. He's not particularly running that much anymore. And I just don't think that there's any way that he goes under this number. Now, some of it is obviously guessing. What is the worst case scenario? Of course, worst case scenario is always that a player gets hurt.
Yeah.
Right. But he's locked in at his position, so there's no thought on offense about his defense. And all you got to do is take a look at the back of the baseball card for Manny Machado. It's 38, 36, 38, 36, 32, 33. Even with L.A., he was hitting home runs too. So I'm going to go over. I think it's a solid one that you're going to be waiting up until like the last month of the season. I don't think he's going to hit 50 home runs. But don't get sucked into that by thinking like, oh, a guy's going to hit 50 and his number's only 30. You can't ever quantify that. That's like thinking Pete Alonso's going to do what he did last year again. You can't count on that. So I'm going to go over on Machado's home runs. That'll be the
all right. I like that. You know what? Since you mentioned Pete Alonso, 36 and a half is where he's at. What was it, 53 last year? I mean, it was that was nuts. That was ridiculous. Obviously, I expected to pull back as well. It's a no bet. Do you have any kind of a lean either way?
I would lean over. I don't think he'll fall back that far. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I could see him hitting 40. Yeah. Yeah, I could. There's a lot of people who think that there's a massive fallback coming. And I suppose if you go back and you look at history, there are more players that struggle in that second year as opposed to the first year. Mm-hmm. So, certainly there is that chance of that happening. But I do think that between Alvarez and Alonso, and we can give out Alvarez number 2, I think both of them have a good shot to go over. And by the way, I like a lot of unders here too. And those of you who've watched me on this know I like a lot of unders. I'm usually an under guy, but since we're talking about overs,
sure.
I would certainly lean toward going on Alonso over 36 and a half.
I like it. All right, so who's your under then?
Yeah,
I've got to know. Unless you want me to give my over.
Yeah, give it over.
I was talking about earlier.
Throw something in there.
Fred Milray, why not? Just here.
Give me one.
The Fran Milreyes prop that I told you, that I sent to you, 26 and a half for him.
Feels low.
See, that's the thing. And I looked at that thinking that might have something, a bit of an overreaction to the fact that last year in Cleveland, when he made that, transition from NL to AL, that the adjustments, and he only hit 10 home runs there. I mean, still, he was a 37 home run hitter last year. And to sort of, for that kind of a drop off, that significant of a drop off, I feel like it's a lot. I'm not going to dive into the best shape of his life situation here, but he did come into camp lighter. The organization was happier now with him than they were back in the, when the season ended last year.
Yeah, and that's a good way to live with these two, is taking guys in the middle as opposed to the top and at the bottom with the guys with the most home runs and least home runs. But as you could see, I mean, at least from some of these totals, Howard, the indication is they feel like there is going to be some sort of drop back, some pullback on the amount of home runs hit this year, or else they would have those numbers higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Significant. I mean, I kind of like the Mike Moustakas at 28 and a half. I kind of like the over on that one a little bit.
Listen, everybody that goes to that division seems to immediately jump. I mean, it's honestly the one park that is and look, I got to watch and know Christian Yelich for a long time in Miami, and I'm not the only one who completely whiffed in thinking that this guy was going to be the best player in baseball. But I think there's something to that park in Milwaukee. Now that takes nothing away from Christian Yelich, but like from a fantasy perspective, even this year, I'm kind of interested in Justin Smoke a little bit. Like I want to see how those lefties do there. Moustakas did it in Milwaukee too. But yeah, you're right. In Cincinnati, that's a great ballpark to play for. And every guy in that lineup has a chance to hit 20, 30 home runs. So that's certainly possible.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, the Central is it's nice and friendly there. Pittsburgh, it might not be, but when you've got Cincinnati and Milwaukee,
Pittsburgh's a friendly team to face. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, their pitching absolutely will be nice. But I mean, you look at even when the wind's blowing out at Wrigley, so all of a sudden that Central Division, I kind of like it a lot. And yeah, Moustakas, I mean. Games in Milwaukee, games in Cincinnati, just keep going. That's one. And one of the things that we talk about are guys with signing big contracts and having to live up to them and the pressure there. I kind of feel like Moustakas is beyond that a little bit, just in the sense that, it was a signing over in Milwaukee, and there was a lot of stuff going on when he was going from Kansas City to free agency and whether or not he was worth that kind of money. And I think that we've seen that he has proven that. So I'll lean on that over there also for Moustakas now in Cincinnati. What was your under?
Yeah, this is going to be a very unpopular one. This is very, very unpopular.
Better not be a guy having fantasy, dude. I will straight up reach through this.
It's not because of injury. It's not because of injury, but and I think, by the way, he's probably a top 5 player in Major League Baseball. But I don't think Juan Soto is going to hit more than 30 home runs. I don't see it. And by the way, he's got as much power as anybody in the big leagues from that side. He's a young player. He's only getting better. But he has got that Joey Votto in him, and that's a great thing. He's a great player. This guy does not swing at bad pitches. Rendon is not in that lineup anymore. He's going to walk more than any team, more than any player in the National League this year. I mean, you could just vision it every time when they throw him outside pitches. How he looks at the pitcher and he takes the bat. He's like, that's who he is. I think he had over 110 walks last year. I think that's going to skyrocket this year. Who is the danger in that lineup of Washington? Think about it. 2 years ago, Harper. Last year, Rendon. Soto is the main guy, and he should be, and he's phenomenal. I think he'll approach 30. I don't see him hitting 34 home runs. I see him on first base a lot, being walked. And I know that's not a popular one. A lot of people think that maybe he's the home run king this year. No one walks that much and is the home run king. Even in Votto's heyday, look how good he was. He only topped that, I think, once over the course of his career. So I'm going under on Soto's home runs, 33.5. And if there is a walk number, give me Soto. I would have it.
I'm looking for Goldschmidt's total. You make a fantastic point when you say, who is in the lineup. Who's now that Ozuna is out of St. Louis, who's hitting behind Goldschmidt? How often is this guy going to get walked?
Well, the only problem with him is he had a brutal year. He was not that good last year. Amazing April, May, and then it's kind of weird because 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, he had a brutal April and May with Arizona, right? He couldn't hit anything, and then all of a sudden just came alive in June through the rest of the year. Last year, I think it was the opposite. He really slowed down. Who is in that lineup? Yeah, that's a really good question. Matt Carpenter is going to have a better year to protect him a little bit. There's no doubt about that. DeYoung, no, I can't make the case. You're right. There's a lot of holes there, but he's only going to get walked a lot if he shows that he is what he was 2 years ago, because he did not have a good year last year.
29.5 I'm seeing for him. Last 3 years, 34 this last year. 33, 36 the years before that, 24 in 2016, 33 in 2015.
So what do you like here?
I like the under, actually. I feel bad, but, really, there is nobody else in that lineup. Matt Carpenter's going to be fighting for playing time at some point if he can't hit his way out of a paper bag. DeYoung is not lineup protection at all. I don't know who's there. No, they're built. Sure. They're built with with shifty guys. Colton Wong, Tommy Edman.
And by the way, there's no guarantee that Goldschmidt is the guy that he was 3 or 4 years ago either. I've heard that too.
Yeah.
So, maybe he's just not that great anymore. I know it's crazy to think that.
St.
Louis gave him all that money, right? and they gave him a huge contract extension. But who was the last guy they gave that much money to? How did that work out? Dexter Fowler? So, just saying.
Oof. Too soon. I think the only thing that saves that prop is that if Dylan Carlson comes up and hits like he's supposed to hit.
And, Nolan Gorman also.
Yes.
Both those guys.
Right. If you don't mind, guys, we need you both here to help this prop. But yeah, I'm on the under on that 29.5.
Yeah, and by the way, there's another prop that I was thinking of doing, but we'll touch on it on another stream. But I didn't want to do it until I know that there's some more certainty here. But there's a prop on Nolan Arenado's hits for the season, and I don't want to jump off the home runs, but it was at 169.5, and I did like the over on that, but I'm going to stay away because I'm petrified of him leaving Coors and what could happen in that. So, if by the way, if Nolan Arenado plays at Coors and plays 150 games, he is going to smash 169 hits. But you can see that's why they have the number there. So, and as we continue, by the way, all of these are legitimate numbers at the Westgate Superbook in Las Vegas. We're not making any of these up, just so you know. These are all real numbers.
Do people make up lines?
I don't know. So I like Machado. So in closing, I like Machado on the over. I like Soto on the under. You gave Franmil Reyes on the over, and then Goldschmidt is your under?
And Goldschmidt's my under. And again, I've got to lean on the over from Mike Moustakas. I'm just a believer. Okay. I'm just a believer, and I love that division for him.
Let's just run through a few more real quick, just so people know what the lines are, and you guys can make your own evaluation. Trout is 39.5 with the Angels this year. Clearly an improved lineup there, no doubt about it. The Angels should be more formidable than they have been in the past. You mentioned Judge at 37.5. Pete Alonso, 36.5. Cody Bellinger, 35.5. Another interesting number. Bregman is at 33.5. Yelich, 34.5. Acuna, who wants to hit 50s, at 36.5. Gallo, 36.5. Arenado, 36.5. My favorite one on the board a month ago when these came out was Eugenio Suarez over 34.5. That was my absolute favorite one of all. Got hurt, you know? Shoulder. Would you do it now? I mean, it's a little risky, right?
No, I'd hit the under on that. Just given the shoulder problem.
I love Suarez. I think Suarez is like one of the most underrated players in baseball, but that's a tough one now.
Listen, any Tommy Pham prop I'm looking at a little more closely now. You know, come on.
You have to. Hoskins is at 32.5. JD Martinez 34.5. What kind of pullback you have on Soler? His number is 29.5.
You know. I feel like
20 home runs less.
20?
That's what it's about. It's kind of what it's telling you here.
I know, right? Again, that's the thing. I would probably take the over on Soler.
I think I would.
I would probably take the over on there. There's no reason to think that. Outside of getting hit, but he's gonna DH a huge chunk of the time.
Right. So here's an advice on another bet. This is bad betting advice, but I'm going to give it to you. But I'm going to give it to you anyway because eventually you're going to be right, and you're going to be right soon. I don't know when it is, but eventually you're going to be right soon. So Nelson Cruz's home run total is 34.5. Just bet under this year, okay? You'll probably lose, but then double up next year, and then maybe you'll win. You can't keep doing this forever, right? You can't hit 40 home runs. At some
point, it's got to drop.
Right? One of these years, it's just, his career came to an end. It didn't work. Is this the year? Is next year the year? This guy's going to hit 40 home runs until he's 50? Harper, 34.5. Gleyber Torres, 32.5. Chris Davis, Howard, much lower than last year. Chris Oakland Davis, of course, 28.5 on Chris Davis. I feel like that's an over. Your guy, Matt Olson, your big pick from last year, 34.5. Wow, high number for him.
Is it though? Is it? He hit the over last year after missing a month with a broken hamate bone in his hand. Come on. Out of principle, I just have to take the over on any Matt Olson prop. I have to.
Trevor Story, 32.5. Chris Bryant, 29.5. Howard mentioned Chapman earlier at 27.5. Baez, 28.5. None of these are ones we're involved in. Yordan Alvarez, 30.5. We discussed him earlier. Springer at 30.5. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Let's stop here. 27.5.
Oh, I tell you what, you don't want to stop on the Houston Astros? Just a mandated going on the under?
Nah, I wouldn't go on. I think a lot of them will go over, actually. They'll be motivated.
All right, Vlad Guerrero Jr., 27.5.
I'm going under.
You don't like him? It's all he does. I mean, he's not a base stealer, and it's the Rogers Center.
I don't know. I don't like the buy. I think he's gonna get hurt or something. I don't know. I don't like it.
Think he's gonna. I mean,
not a big
all
fan.
right. I mean, see,
I think he's gonna be a stud eventually, but I don't know. Something about him is missing for me.
Huh.
Eloy Jimenez 30.5. Jose Ramirez 27.5. Let's wrap it up with these. Gary Sanchez 30.5. Donaldson, what do you think about him? 28.5 this year in Minnesota.
I think that's doable for him. I mean, see, that's the thing.
Everybody in that park's been hitting home runs.
Yeah, this Minnesota team has just been it's been ridiculous. I mean, they crushed the home run record last year.
I got a good one on an under here. Another one that I didn't talk about. How about Charlie Blackmon under 28.5?
I mean, he would have to get hurt. I mean, if I'd be much happier doing it. What's that?
Could they trade him?
You know, we've been saying that. There you go. You know what? Take the under right now, and then if next year they'll trade him then, and then you double down.
Same thing with Charlie Blackmon. The trade factor with Blackmon and the old man factor with Nelson Cruz.
Right? I mean, that's kind of what you're looking at. I mean, we've been talking about Blackmon being traded for at least the last four seasons.
That's true. And then I don't have an updated number on Mookie Betts, but it was 27.5 LA.
All right. I need an updated number on Ozuna, too. I want to see what's going on.
Yeah, I don't have an updated one
All
on
right. Well, so there you go. So, Craig, once again, your favorites are?
Yes. Over on Manny Machado's home runs at 31.5. And under on Juan Soto 33.5. And then next week, I will continue with home runs, the lower tier home runs in baseball. So these are ones from like 25 home runs on down to, believe it or not, they have props for guys that are only hitting 10 home runs. And then there are a couple to tease you with, especially on the pitching end. One of them in terms of wins, and I know that's not always easy to quantify, but I do have a couple really good ones for next week as well. So just as a reminder, if you're doing props, you're betting props, it's great to have opinions. It's another thing to bet on 30 or 40 props. You can't make money doing it that way. Find the best ones if you play fantasy, if you're a bettor, however you do it, and zone in on 1, 2, or 3 maximum over the course of the year. Because, again, the more you bet, the more you lose. Find the best ones. Don't bet them all. Can't win that way.
There you go. Sage advice. We'll drop the mic on that one. Big thanks to our producer, Matt Sells, for always doing a phenomenal job. Craig, all right, I'll catch up with you next week. We'll hit those wins totals and see what we got. But for tonight, thanks for tuning in to the Wager Alarm live stream. For Craig Mish, I'm Howard Bender. We'll catch you next time.